One of the best things about living in the West, due to the Enlightenment, is that we here have the ability to criticise ourselves, to reflect, to improve, and to make things better for those around us. In the previous video, I morbidly told you of my celebration of the death of Osama bin Laden. Maybe that was wrong. I naively thought that that would have been the end to all of the horror and the division. Such a celebration was only reserved for such a tyrant, and for the pain he'd caused so many people he'd never met, didn't care about.
What makes him a man is that in the midst of that battle, he does not lose himself. This battle is not over.
But, as this video will explain, the events of this week with the Labour Party again should shock you, but we must support those who are brave.
Clear eyes, full hearts.
The word bravery can mean many things to many people, but saying something unpopular in this day and age has somehow become a brave act. The lady on the screen has had a pretty difficult week, starting with telling the truth, which only reflects the horror of the reality that young women have had to endure in this country for a generation. Sarah Champion has spoken out on the issue of Pakistani grooming gangs, to what I can only say being harassed out of the shadow cabinet, and Labour should take that with shame. The article that she wrote goes through how she was disgusted at learning of the scale of the assaults which were taking place against a specific group of people by another specific group of people. Who are those people? Well, on the one hand we have vulnerable young women, and on the other hand we have gangs of men who originate, their heritage is from Pakistan. They are all Muslim. For some reason we're not allowed to say it, because if she's losing her job then this video is going to get taken down for hate speech, no doubt. We're after truth. We're after facts, we're not after violence. Let's hear what Sarah has to say. If you disagree with her, I'd love to hear your comments.
I just can't believe that we're here doing the same story in a different town, and this is going to keep going on and on and on until we actually grasp the nettle. What we need to be looking at is why this specific crime is occurring, and this specific crime is organised gangs of predominantly Pakistani British men who are going out and looking for vulnerable children, predominantly girls, grooming, exploiting, trafficking, abusing them across the country. And what frustrates me is that we're not going to the root of the problem. We're not protecting our children properly so that they understand about this crime. But also we now have probably hundreds of these perpetrators in jail, so let's start doing some research. The government needs to pay some money to do some research and see what are the commonalities that are happening, because it's not rocket science. You know, this is a specific group of men that are doing this crime, so let's understand why. You know, what are the drivers, what can we do to prevent it in the future, because I don't want to be sitting here in another 6 months with another town. It's getting too much, Victoria.
As you'll see on that screen, there were 1,400 cases of child sexual exploitation in one town, Rotherham. She is the MP for Rotherham. She is entitled, allowed, in fact, she's been voted in and employed to talk about these issues. We live in a democracy. We need to be able to speak. We come together as a family. We're going to overcome this. But it's not going to happen if we're firing female MPs for talking about sexual assault. Think about that. Think about how amoral that action of the Labour Party is there. So this champion, in name and nature, stuck her head above the parapet. And it's only taken a week for them to hound her out of her job. At this point, what is the need for a Labour Party? If you're not going to stand up for the rights of women, if you're not going to stand up for the vulnerable, what are you doing? I've voted for Jeremy Corbyn 3 times, and I can tell you that I've been a member on and off since 2008. But, you know, a couple of months ago, after the election, direct debit ran out. Well, I'm not going to be renewing, am I? I said in the first video that the conduct of the woman who abused and insulted Phil, well, that is how a lot of Labour people actually do argue. They see themselves as superior. They think that they're fighting racism whilst calling a mixed race man a Nazi. And they think that they're in favour of gender equality, but they're firing women for speaking the truth, for taking real-world evidence and informing the public. I'm going to go out my way to pay attention to what happens to Sarah Champion now, and I will post updates if anything remarkable happens. Our next brave woman here is the one person really, really easy to defend, and it comes from the old line from the American Revolutionary War. I disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. The outspoken, provocative, and passionate Katie Hopkins.
That any of us are able to articulate what it means to be British anymore. Do you know, Ali, what does it mean to be British?
Well, I remember growing up, we did not have all these segregated communities, which we happen to have now. And the only reason I can point them out to is the root cause is not that the mainstream changed. It's that the Muslim community became more and more radicalized. And how did that occur? Because we did not monitor who was coming to teach that Muslim community in the mosques. We did not make sure who was dealing with what. Some of these organizations, such as Hizb ut-Tahrir, are banned in Muslim countries. But they happen to freely exist in this country. I'm one of the segregated people when it comes to the Muslim community because I can't relate to them anymore.
That's interesting.
Yes, I am a Muslim, but I would not go to the mosque on a regular basis because everything which I would be scared to send my kids to the mosque these days. I don't know what they're going to teach them there.
So you would be...
I don't know what they're listening to. So that's a problem, and it's about time Muslims do understand as well that there is an issue within the Muslim community, and they need to wake up, smell the coffee, understand that they need to speak out for the welfare of their own future.
Ali, thank you very much for your call this morning. I'm completely struck by how A, you've managed to shut me up, which is a minor miracle in itself. B, that you're more confident talking to someone who's seen by many as such an obnoxious opposite, even called racist on many times, or have callers ringing in wanting to blow me up. Versus that it's easier for you to talk to me than perhaps talk to some in your own community because you don't have freedom of speech as a Muslim anymore, because you don't know whether that will be well received. And even in our country, which has embraced many generations of cultures, that you can no longer send your own children to the mosque because you don't know what will happen to them there.
There's so many Muslims out there who are dragging us down, and they need to come. We come to this country, which is a Christian country, which you were kind enough to let us come here and stay and give us opportunities. And on top of that, they come here and they want to, have their own Sharia rules. They want to do their own thing. But if you were going to come to our country, would you be able to do the same? No. So I don't understand what is everybody's problem,
And Julian, let me ask a question, because it's not often we hear voices like yours in the media as a whole. I don't hear many Julians speaking out in terms of this view that there is a problem in the mosque. Children are being taught things that are potentially not helpful, that, if we were to go and live in other countries under Islam, would we be allowed to carry on with our own cultures? Well, no. Julian, why don't we hear your voice very often? Why don't we hear many voices like yours?
Because I think a lot of people in our community, I know a lot of friends who want to say these things, but they're just so scared of the community and what people will think about them. And if we even say something against Islam, we are frightened in a way because we will get judged by the community. And because our parents are older generation and they lived here for many years, and we are the new generation, we would like to be free. We would like to be more modern. We would like to, I don't think it's a day and age to cover your face and walk on the street. I really, as a British Muslim, I look at a person who covers their face, I feel unsafe. We're living in the West. We're not back in Saudi Arabia, or you know what I mean?
I do. I'm thinking, Julian, when I was saying about how as a nation we do become, when we have an attack like this, we do become less. We do become more cowed, if you will. When I'm speaking about that internationally, which many people have criticised me for, what I'm seeing though, or what I'm hearing, Julian, listening to you as well, is this fear or this being less or being somewhat crushed is all sorts of fears. A fear, my fear, our fear of terror attacks, a fear from others of being called racist, being seen as racist, of talking openly because they might be seen as racist, and then the fear you're addressing, Julian, a fear amongst maybe a Muslim community of speaking out, of being heard to in any way speak out against your faith group or Muslims in your community.
It's very tough, for me to make this call. I was really scared, but I did it because I really need to get it off my chest. And there are many Muslims out there, Katie.
Two very alarming interviews, that's for certain. Now, thank you, Katie. Here we move on to the work of a person named Anne-Marie Waters. She's the director of Sharia Watch UK. Now, I'll be honest, I hadn't actually gone onto this website until I actually started making this video. Yeah, it was worth just putting it in front of you, so at least I had to read it myself, and you could see that I actually bothered just to go through the About page. They have pages and pages of information, and we'll get to some of the more worrying things in a second. His greatest areas of concern are that of the treatment of women and children, how we can have our freedom of speech, and the attitude and treatment of non-Muslims, specifically Jews, and their non-Muslims versus Muslims. That's how the Quran teaches people to think. So that's why that thing on the screen there, free speech, is absolutely crucial. And any amendments or changes to how free speech works, any restrictions, actually makes Muslims in this country way more vulnerable than they are today. And it's getting worse, as you can hear from the interviews we had with Katie. There were complaints about Anne-Marie Waters standing to be the leader of the UK Independence Party, UKIP. It depends on how their party members want to go. If they want to be seen as a sort of fake, more ridiculous version of the Conservative Party, then sure, go with someone plain. But if you want someone who can actually debate, someone who actually cares, someone who's put years and years of effort in, then there's only one logical pick for a party which is in 4th to 5th place and is trying to retain relevance. So let's listen to Anne-Marie Waters.
Jen. And we're doing it again.
We're doing what again?
We're avoiding the common denominator in these attacks. Of course terrorism comes from all different areas, but we can talk about Islamic terrorism in its own right, and there's nothing wrong with that, and we should be able to.
And again,
all week, I'm not talking about, I said they're separate things.
Common denominator.
I'm talking about these apparent random attacks, like the one we saw in London last week, that we're putting down to a random criminal. How many random criminals of the same faith are we going to have before we look at the elephant in the room? And it's been in the media all week. We will never know what can possibly have driven him. And the only thing not a possibility is religious belief. And the fact that a person has been involved in crime or has taken drugs does not exclude them for having... no, they're not. I mean, even the Prime Minister, in the Commons this week told us very matter-of-factly that this was a perversion of a great faith. She didn't offer any scriptural backing for that. In fact, she said it without any analysis or investigation of Scripture at all.
But sure. The IRA and as well, and your coverage of that, and our coverage of IRA atrocities in the past. But Anne-Marie,
what's the alternative to the oxygen of publicity? I mean, are we expected to ignore these things altogether? What is it we're actually looking for here? I don't think we're giving it the correct coverage at all. I mean, Douglas described it as a single terror act. In London, yes, but how many terror attacks have there been across Europe in the last couple of years? And what have they got in common? And with this, can we not use our common sense and sit down and look at the religion that is possibly driving this? Why are, and let me ask, when the IRA were doing what they did everyone scramble to find an excuse? They were criminals, they were involved in drug abuse, they were mentally ill, or did they accept that they were Irish Republicans with an Irish Republican aim?
Well, some were involved in drug dealing.
Do the same? Yeah. And if there's no problem with Islamic scripture inspiring this, then let's look at it. Why aren't we looking at it? Why is it? If it's not Islamic scripture, then we have no problem.
Wait a minute. Zaba's going to come back.
Now, maybe Anne-Marie Waters will not win the leadership race for the UK Independence Party, but if she does, it would be incredibly good for our public discourse. If she doesn't, well, there's got to be hundreds and thousands of people who have to take up the slack. Katie Hopkins lost her job for saying something in the wake of another terrorist incident, Sarah Champion has lost her job for saying the facts about a case upon case upon case, from town to city to country. So that's the end of part 3. Part 4 will be coming up soon. I'm going to keep the argument open, honest, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.